What is going on, Solo fam? My name is John Solo, and today brings our final episode of Messed Up Origins Crypt TV edition. At this point, you should all be familiar with Crypt TV, but if you're not, don't stress, because I've got you covered. Crypt TV is a channel here on YouTube that produces some of the best scary content you've seen in your life. Their goal is to build a giant, terrifying cinematic universe where the stories all connect and something's hiding behind every corner. Let me tell you, I don't want to live in a universe where there's more than one of these things creeping around. They're building this universe at a very fast pace and upload 3 times a week on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. As you might expect, my favorite series is Crypt Fables, which takes the classic fairy tales we always talk about on this channel and changes the way you see them forever. As if I wasn't doing enough of that already, right? The episode we're covering today is called The Little Mermaid, and it's definitely one of my favorites. But first we should go over the original story because not everyone's heard it and it's just as messed up in its own special way. And as always, if you want to support the channel and give this series the send-off it deserves, make sure to smash that like button and help us reach our goal of 3,000 likes. The original Little Mermaid follows a young mermaid princess who's getting tired of living in the ocean kingdom that her father rules. The mermaid is constantly hearing stories about how great the human world is from her sisters and grandma, but she's not old enough to check it out on her own. Instead, she visits an old sea witch, and in exchange for her voice, which in this version means cutting out her tongue, she's given a pair of human legs and told she has 3 days to make the prince fall in love with her or she dies. She's lucky enough that when she washes up on the shore, the prince is willing to take care of her. But this relationship doesn't go anywhere romantically, and the prince falls in love with another woman and a wedding is planned for the next day. The mermaid is devastated because not only is she losing the man she was falling in love with, she's also gonna die and he has no idea. The next day, they take the prince's boat out into the ocean for a post-wedding celebration, and at the end of the night, he and his bride pass out in his cabin. The mermaid is still awake and walks to the edge of the ship to take one last look at the ocean before she dissolves into sea foam. Yeah, I didn't mention that, but when mermaids die, they dissolve into sea foam because unlike humans, they don't have immortal souls. There's one way the mermaid can get out of this deal though, and that's by stabbing the prince in the heart with a magic dagger that her sisters gave her and letting his blood drip onto her feet so they'll turn back into a mermaid tail. She's about this close to sending that dagger through the prince's chest, but she can't make herself do it. Instead, she throws the dagger into the ocean and then jumps in herself, waiting to dissolve into water. Only instead of turning into sea foam like she expected, she turns into air. Then suddenly, she's surrounded by these angelic figures called the Daughters of the Air, who exist on a spiritual plane and travel around the world doing good deeds. They tell the mermaid that because of her selfless act, that if she wants to, she can become a Daughter of the Air as well, and after 300 years of servitude, she can earn herself an immortal soul. Those conditions may sound like the worst internship on the planet, but that's actually a pretty sweet gig for her, so she accepts, and that's how the story ends. So not exactly a happy ending, but not too sad of one either. Unfortunately, you can't say the same thing about Crypt TV's Little Mermaid. This story is sadder, darker, and more gruesome, so if Hans Christian Andersen wasn't doing it for you, this one definitely will. The episode opens with a shot of what appears to be a swamp that someone has set up camp in. We also see a sign advertising Gregory's House of Enchantments featuring a live mermaid. Personally, I wouldn't care if they advertised that they had a still living Nelson Mandela in there because I'm not risking a walk through the swamp and getting my socks wet. Worst feeling ever. I guess I'm the only one who feels that way though, because despite the commute through the marsh, Gregory's got a full house. The onlookers appear to be curious, disgusted, and even afraid, and unsurprisingly, the mermaid looks this way too. After pacing back and forth with his cane rather dramatically, Gregory stands silently behind the mermaid and with a sinister grin on his face, picks up a bucket of raw fish. I just want to add, there is no way the inside of that tent doesn't smell like ass. You got a bucket of raw fish, a mermaid that's sitting half submerged in a tub, and not to mention the probably poor hygiene of everyone in that tent given the time period. Put all that together with the fact that this is taking place in the middle of a swamp, no way that tent doesn't stink. I'm sorry, there's just no way. After teasing the mermaid for a bit, the master finally gives her the snack, and the crowd looks on in disgust as she devours the entire thing in just a few seconds. There's some scattered applause and Gregory bows even though he didn't really do anything. The master watches as they exit, and when he tries to leave himself, the mermaid grabs onto his coat and speaks the only line of dialogue in this episode. That was chilling. Grigory has no pity for the mermaid. He pulls away, turns off the record player, and heads back to his private quarters to count the money he's made from her suffering. Suddenly, he starts to hear music from the record player again, and after a few seconds decides to investigate. The mermaid is no longer there. She's been replaced by a beautiful woman singing a melody. At least that's what the showmaster thinks. Would you look at that? A mermaid disguising herself as a human to seduce a man? Does that remind you of anything? It's when the master leans in for a kiss that he finds himself in trouble. I don't know exactly what's happening here, but I can tell you I don't like how it sounds. The mermaid then proceeds to reach into her master's chest and rip out his heart. We then see her admiring the heart with Grigory lying dead beside her. You'd think she'd be happier that he's dead and that she's finally free, but it doesn't appear to be that way. Instead, she looks sad, maybe even hopeless, and after a few moments, cut to black. I'm not sure if this one was as scary as it was depressing. Either way, it gave me some feels. My favorite part about this episode, outside of the obvious connections to the original legend, is the number of ways you can interpret its events and use them to theorize about a backstory. Maybe this mermaid is just like Ariel, and one day while swimming in the ocean doing her thing, she saw Grigory standing on the coast and it was love at first sight. She swam up to him, nervous that she'd scare him away, because how could you not run from something that looks like this? But she didn't scare him. If anything, Grigory was fascinated by her and wanted her to stay on land with him forever. Sadly, she mistook fascination for love and soon found herself in a situation that she couldn't escape from. Stranded on land with a sadistic man who wanted nothing more but to exploit her for a profit. She sat in denial about this for quite some time before the events of this episode took place. It's when she begs him for mercy and he brushes her off that she realizes he's never gonna let her go. So she does the reasonable thing that anyone being held captive would fantasize about doing. She rips his heart out of his chest with her bare hands. She didn't want to kill the man she loved, but if she didn't, she'd be held captive there for the rest of her life. Sadly, it looks like this will be the case anyways, because as a mermaid, she has no way of getting to the ocean before she... Whatever happens to mermaids when they're on land for too long. So with or without her master, she was destined to suffer until the end. It was her choice to determine how long, and I think she picked the right option. That's my interpretation of the story, at least. I like to think of it as an alternate reality where Ariel fell in love with a scumbag instead of a prince. But what are your thoughts? Did you have any theories of your own? If not, what do you think of our last episode? I want to give a huge thank you to Crypt TV for sponsoring this series and letting us analyze every single detail of their work for the past 7 weeks. If I haven't said it enough already, I highly encourage you guys go over to their channel and check out their content, because the Fable series on its own, while amazing, is barely scratching the surface. I've got links to their channel and the Mermaid episode in the comments, description, and at the end of this video. Before you head out, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have, then ring that bell and turn notifications on so that way you don't have to keep checking your half-broken sub box for new uploads. Until next time, Solo fam, thank you all for watching, and remember, John shot first.